Wysteria, energy, twister.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Wysteria here. I wasn't sure on what I actually wanted to do next. I decided I wanted to do Drac von Stoller collection, or Stoller, Drac von Stoller collection. And this is Curse of the Evil Fairies Fort. Patrick and Sophia O'Brien were direct descendants of a cursed family. When the tales of fairies were very much real and feared among many Irish families abroad, this is when they were cursed. Patrick and Sophia only knew of the tales that they were told by their parents and were not directly affected by the superstitions. They didn't believe in any of them. Patrick and Sophie would joke, about the evil fairies that lived on forts just miles from where they lived. The children's father would tell bedtime stories to their children. Seamus, that was, one of the children of course, Niall, and Anne. The children often had nightmares about fairies, taking their souls and coming back as a changeling to torment their family, then die after that, with their parents never realising that it isn't actually their child. As the children got a little older, their fear of fairies seems to fade away. One day, the children got the courage to take a trip, let's say, to the fairies. They wanted to find the fort and put their concerns to rest about these evil fairy tales their parents told them when they were too young to distinguish between fantasy and reality. Seamus was the older of the three children and the bravest, so it was evident that he would be the one to lead them through the evil fairies' fort. Anne, well, she was the youngest and usually the most frightened, but she knew her older brothers would take good care of her. They wouldn't let anything happen to her. The children proceeded to sneak out of the house when all of a sudden their mother, Sophie, stopped them dead in their tracks and said, "Where do you think you're going?" The children replied, "To ride on our bikes through the trails. We'll make sure we'll be back before sundown." Their mother said, "Please be careful, and you better all be back for dinner." Seamus replied, "Don't worry, Mum. We'll be right on time for dinner. That's a promise." "Okay, now hurry along. I made cookies and hot apple pie for dessert," said Sophie. The children got on their bikes and pedalled down the road to the evil fairies' fort. Finally, after about an hour of riding down the road, they reacted their destiny and made a change. Towards the evil fairies' fort, of course. "There is no such place," said Niall. "Look at this place. It is creepy looking." "I definitely wouldn't want to live here," exclaimed Anne. "Well, since we're here, who wants to go first?" said Seamus. "I do," replied Neil, spelt Niall. It is Neil, though to look at it you would think it were Niall, but it's Neil. Neil entered into the fort and felt as though someone was watching him. "Is anyone feeling that feeling right now?" said Neil. Anne and Seamus laughed at Neil. "All I feel is a cool breeze. Nothing unusual," laughed Seamus. Anne chimed in and said, "Neil, don't talk like that. Are you trying to scare me?" "I don't want to be scared, and I'm not scared, and you know I scare very easily." "No, I'm not kidding. I felt like someone is watching me," said Neil. "I want to go home," cried Anne. "Oh, it's probably nothing. Let's stick together. It's best to do that. Not separate from one another," said Seamus. Seamus laughed and said, "I don't believe this is a fairy fort." Then Seamus found a metal pipe on the ground and started shouting and swinging its metal with great force, descending to the evil fairy fort. Seamus was in for a big surprise. Each swing of the metal pipe against the fort just angered the fairies even more, as he started to smash it against the fairy fort wall. The evil fairies had seen enough, and it was time to let these kids know and teach them a lesson. All of a sudden, there was a blinding light so bright it lit up the whole fort. The children couldn't find their way out. They were very frightened. All the children could hear were evil fairies' voice telling them their souls were being taken right before their very eyes. And when they return home, they will be changelings. The evil fairy explained to the children that when you return home, you will whine and screech and consistently irritate your parents. Also, you will have an appetite that can't be satisfied. If any one of you survive, you will be rejected by all fairies, and you will no longer belong to your parents. If you die, your parents will never realise you aren't their child. Now go and do your evil deeds, because your souls no longer belong to you, laughed the wicked fairies. The bright light diminished. The fairy vanished before their eyes, and the possessed children left the fort, got on their bikes and headed for home to torment their parents. The children's eyes were red as fire, hearts pounding out of their chests and whining as they pedalled their way back home. Now that evil thoughts were in their minds, they were ready to turn their once beloved home into a demon house. It was getting dark outside, and their dinner was getting cold, and the parents were worried sick something terrible might have happened. And, well, they were right. As the children approached their home, Sophie was looking out of Anne's bedroom window on the second level of the house, hoping she would see the children on the way and that they would show up very soon. Sophie said, "Look, I can see them, but something is wrong. Am I imagining things? Are their eyes red as fire? And I can also hear a whining noise." Her husband got out of the chair and came to the window. "Do you see what I see?" said Sophie. "No, I do not. You're just imagining things," said Patrick. "I know what I saw was not my imagination. Our children's eyes were red as fire, and I could have sworn the whining came from them," said Sophie. "Nonsense," said Patrick. "What you need is to calm down, and when you see the children, their eyes won't be red, and they won't be whining either. You're just letting the evil fairy superstition get the best of you. As long as we've lived in this house, we've never encountered anything out of the ordinary. And especially, well, there's been no evil fairies lurking either. Not in the woods, and not out there, not in here, not our house. Now let's drop the whole thing, and you'll see I'm right," said Patrick in a stern voice. The children got off their bikes, ran into the house, sat down at the dinner table, and tore into the cold food like a bunch of wild animals. Sophie and Patrick ran down to the stairs to confront the children as to why they were so late. Before they could scold the children, all three children turned their heads towards their parents, with eyes red as fire. They started whining and screeching and screeching and whining. "What is wrong with our little darlings?" cried Sophie to Patrick. "Is this some joke? It isn't amusing," said Patrick. He was getting angry. "I want you all to get up from the table, go into the living room, and I want some answers," said Patrick. "What's the matter, Daddy? Don't like the way your little darlings are acting," laughed the children. "Daddy, why don't you and Mummy go to your room and don't come out until we say you can?" giggled Anne. "That's it, you're all grounded for a week," yelled Patrick. The children just laughed, threw their plates on the floor, ran upstairs to their room. Sophie started crying, saying the fairies have stolen their souls, and I'll never get them back. What will we do, Patrick? "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them all a good spanking. That's what I need to do. I'll learn them a lesson that way. I am very upset with them. Very upset," said Patrick, and as he did, his voice was getting angrier and angrier. Patrick, my darling, please don't spank the kids. They are changelings. And now that we see with our own eyes the tales our parents told us when we were children were true, well, we would have stopped this from happening. We should have, before it got this far. Patrick, let's lock their doors, and in the morning call the priest to bless our house and perform an exorcism on our children. Maybe this will bring our children's souls back from wherever the fairies are keeping them. We want to live as normal, not like this. Not like this. Surprise. Now you know an exorcism should be out of question because everyone that has ever come in contact with the evil fairies has rarely survived, and there's about a 1% chance of survival. And if they do survive, then they are shunned by the evil fairies and their own families. As much as I hate to say this, there is no cure for children like this, and we'll probably be burying them, all of them, by the end of the week, said Patrick. No, I won't let you talk like that about our children. No, there has to be a way out of the curse, and I won't rest until I find a cure. Okay, then Sophie, go ahead and do what you need to do. But in reality, you will see that I was right all along, said Patrick. Sophie stomped out of the room and slept on the couch the remainder of the night. She prayed and wept all through the night that God would intervene and save the children's souls. She wanted them safe from the evil fairy's curse. All that was heard in the O'Brien's house that night was whining and screaming at the children's bedroom doors. Finally, morning came. Sophie got in her car and drove as fast as she could to beg her preacher to go to her house and save her children from evil fairies. But the curse was too strong for any mortal to break. As Sophie's car sped down the road, she noticed something very, very wrong. As her vehicle passed the houses on her street, her car wasn't making any headway. All the houses were the same, and she just ended up in the same spot, right in front of her own house. Sophie stopped her car, put her head in her hands and wept uncontrollably. Sophie's husband walked up to the car and knocked on the driver's side window, and Sophie rolled down the window. Patrick asked her, "What's going on? I thought you were driving to bring a preacher to the house." "I was, but as I was driving down the road, I got nowhere. I kept seeing the same houses on our street. It's as though some force was keeping me from getting to my destination. I know I was gone for over an hour, and you can't tell me this is as far as I got," cries Sophie. "Sophie, I don't know what's going on, but get out of the car and let me go and get the preacher," said Patrick. "Please hurry, Patrick. There's not much time left." Patrick sped off down the road. As Sophie was walking up the steps to the front door of the house, turned to wave goodbye to her husband, the car exploded, killing Patrick instantly. Sophie ran down the steps, screaming and screaming at the top of her lungs. "Why did you evil fairies kill my Patrick?" Sophie dropped to her knees and asked God not to let the fairies harm her children. "If you want to take someone, take me. Please, please don't take the children. They've done nothing to hurt the fairies," cried Sophie. But Sophie was wrong about the children. They did anger the evil fairies because Seamus destroyed the wicked fairies' fort with his metal pipe. Though to them it did not look like it was being destroyed, it actually was. The evil fairies forewarned her children that if anyone desecrates their fortress, they will surely die, along with any family members. Sophie's whole world came crashing down in 20 hours. Sophie said to herself, "If I don't get a grip, I'll surely lose the children too, and I don't want that to happen." Sophie ran back to the house to call the police, but all she got was a busy signal. So she ran to the neighbour's house to use their phone. Sophie knocked on the door, and an evil fairy answered the door and said, "It's too late. The children's souls, they are mine. By the time you reach them, they will all be dead. Then you'll be taken back to the fairies' fort, where you will be locked inside forever as an evil hag. I will let you see your children as they take their last breath. Then you will be whisked away to the evil fairy's fort, where you'll spend eternity as an evil hag to scare off any intruders that try to defile the fort. Sophie's tears were pouring down her cheeks as she walked inside her house to see her children for the last time. All she could hear was their whining. Sophie decided, since she lost her husband and was going to miss her children and spend an eternity as an evil hag, she wasn't about to give the evil fairies this satisfaction. So she went upstairs to her room, opened the top dresser drawer, and pulled out Patrick's revolver, then loaded the gun, went to the children's room, kissed her dying children on their foreheads until there was no life in them, then pointed the gun straight at her head. She pulled the trigger. Sophie fell to the ground. The O'Brien family was no more, and after the townspeople found out what had happened to the O'Briens, the townspeople built a concrete wall around the evil fairy's fort to keep out curious lookers. Finally, the townspeople could rest easy and not have to live in fear, wondering when the evil fairies would wreak havoc on their town. The end. And that is the full story. I like how they're short like that, though. It's kind of good. Of the evil fairy curse and the evil fairy fort. Thank you for listening, and many blessings.
Wysteria, energy, twister.